Hey, welcome back to part 2 of how to write a song using song visualization. If you haven't checked out part 1 yet, go check that out and come back and we'll get started in 1 minute. Okay, we're at step 4, but before I get into step 4, I want to talk a little bit about all the data that you've been logging into your brain since you were born. Everything that you listen to and all the music that you've absorbed, all the songs that made you happy, that made you cry, that made you feel energetic, all of that stuff has come in and gotten stuck in your brain. And this is where we start to tap into it and really utilize all of those wonderful things that you love about music. Step 4 is about giving the direction to each of your members and letting them play. So in step 3, we were telling each musician a little bit about what we wanted them to play. But in step 4, this is where you get to step back and you listen to them. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you take a moment and give direction to, let's say, our drummer, who in my example is John Bonham, and I told him about a drum beat that I wanted to hear, okay? That's all the information that I need to give him. Once I've given that, I take a step back and I let him play. So in my mind, I visualize him sitting at the kit and I'm standing next to him and I've given the direction of that drum beat, just the boom, 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 that kind of a thing. So I hear that. Now, just as I gave the example of the saxophone solo going up and coming down, that you could hear that. Well, the same thing is going to be true for the drums. So you take a moment and you listen to what your virtual drummer is doing. And your brain is going to know what to do. It's going to do fills. It's going to have all the nuances that you want. You're going to hear the reverb on the kit. You're going to hear the sizzle of the cymbals. You allow yourself to do that. So what you want to do is you want to do that for each member of the band. So you move on to the bass, that big round tone that we're wanting to hear alongside the drums. So you do that with the bass also. And you're not hearing notes exactly, but I mean, and you know, maybe you might hear a couple of notes, but it's really about feel, about when the bass player goes low and when he goes high, and you could almost hear it. You could almost hear those notes. Then you move over to the keyboards, you do the same thing. And then you go to the vocals. And when you do this for each instrument, you start to build up the landscape and you're able to hear all the musicians playing together. So you're formulating that song in your head without touching an instrument, and you're able to do that. Everybody's able to do that, okay? So step 4 is just really trying to solidify in your mind what this band is playing, okay? So far it's still all in your head. Step 5 is where you actually get to get into your home studio and start to lay this stuff down. So what I would start with, or what I have started with a lot of times, you don't have to start with the drums, but I start with the drums. And what I would do is I would come up with a drum beat. I'll either play it on my electronic kit, or I'll use loops, or pre-recorded wave file, whatever it is. I am looking for that drum beat and that sound that I heard in my head. I'm seeking out that sound and bringing it into the software that I'm using, whatever DAW that I'm using, okay? So I'll look for that beat, or I'll create that beat. I'll do like 32 bars of it so that I got room to play around with the other instruments. I'll lay that down And I'll even put some effects on it and some little things just to spice it up so that it feels good when I listen to it. Then I'll move on to the next instrument. Now, what is the next instrument? Well, that's going to be totally up to you and what feels exciting or interesting to you. There isn't a formula of going from the bass, or from the drums to the bass, to the keys, to the vocals. You put down whatever you want. So let's say the next thing I want to do is put down keys, because I'm excited about figuring out what those really cool, colorful jazz chords are on top of the kit, on top of those drums. I'll get to the bass, I'll get to the vocals. So I'll sit down, again, with whatever resources I have. Maybe you play piano, maybe you don't, but you have access to getting either through loops, like easy keys, or playing it yourself, or having a friend play it, or even going on Fiverr and hiring somebody and describing to them what you want. There's all kinds of ways to get it. So I would move on to the next instrument, which we'll say moving on to the bass, and you insert that in the pocket between the drums and the keys, and it's starting to come to life. Now the next thing I would do is I would say, okay, I'm gonna mix this a little bit. I'm gonna get it so that it feels good. So I am creating the parts in my recording software, and I'm producing as I go. I don't wait to the end to do my mixes. I do it as I go, and I put effects as I go. That is for the sole reason of keeping myself excited about what I'm doing and inspired, because you got to ride this thing like a wave all the way through. Okay, so step 5 is about putting the tangible pieces down as best as you can, and you may have already imagined particular notes. At least you may have imagined the drum beat. Okay, that's a little easier to imagine in your head. So you put down whatever you can as best as you can, and you mix it in a way where you could listen to it as a starting point. Okay, so that's step 5. Okay, so that brings us to step 6. Step 6 is basically adding and subtracting in your recording software, whatever it is that feels good to you or feels right to you. So this is where you're starting to build your song form. If you like an intro and a verse and a pre-chorus, verse, chorus, whatever, you start to piece this stuff together, you know. It's okay to copy and paste some sections in just to have for reference. I suggest that you try to play it all the way through. I mean, sometimes you could cheat if you want, of course, but eventually you're gonna want to have parts that are not repeated just because it'll sound better. But map out the song in this phase. And also what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to try and further produce it. So let's say you get to verse 3 and you're like, you know what, I've heard that piano too much already. Maybe I'll change it to a synth. Maybe I'll drop it out completely. Maybe I'll let the bass guitar go up an octave here. You start to tweak those little things, whatever gets you excited about working on the song. Likewise, if you are putting down the different instruments, there's no right or wrong as to which one to pick up, okay? You pick up the one that you're excited about working on. And that could mean that you go from the drums right into the vocals. It doesn't matter. You always want to go for the thing that excites you and park the thing that you're dreading a little bit. Because what happens is as you work on the song more, it gets more exciting and more interesting. And then those little things that you were a little unsure of, you'll actually have excitement and a basis to work on top of, and it could actually answer some questions about what that part is supposed to sound like. So don't try to work it out. If you're struggling with it, go to something else. Pick up a different instrument. Okay, so that's step 6. Step 7 is making a rough mix. You make a rough mix for inspection not for pleasure, okay? Because you don't want to make a rough mix. Listen to it over and over and over, and what's going to happen is you're going to get what's called demo love. You're going to listen to that thing so many times that it's going to be the only version of the song that sounds right. So from that point on, anytime you try to add or subtract anything from it, it's going to sound wrong, okay? So you want to avoid demo love, okay? So you make that demo, you step away from your gear, give yourself a break, you know? Go have a meal, rest your ears, and then go listen to it. Then you're able to listen to that song as other people are going to listen to it, as a listener and not as a performer or musician or instrumentalist. That'll help you with the flow. That'll help you with getting an impression of it that it's hard to get when you're actually working on the song itself and playing the instruments. Okay, so that brings us to the last step. And I think it's one of the most important steps. Step 8 is work as fast as you can. Now, I'm not saying to rush it. I'm saying work on the song as much as you can, as quickly as you can, because otherwise you run the risk of A, getting bored with the song and just never finishing it, or B, you get bored with the song and you overproduce it. So you're listening to it so many times that you're like going, it's boring to me. Now I'm going to add a trumpet. And you listen to that, you over-listen to that, and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to put in a harp now. By the time you get to the end, you've got an overproduced mess. So the best thing to do is keep it fresh and be quick with the production of the whole thing. Okay, and then you've got fine-tuning elements that you do to finish it off. You got that final mix, and you get into the mastering or whatever else that you need to do with the song, and then you're done. How cool? How cool is that? So where do we go from here? Well, what I'd like to do is to do another video or a collection of videos, whatever it takes, of this example that I used for these 2 videos. That purely came out of my imagination. I don't have anything recorded that sounds like John Bonham and Donald Fagen and David Bowie and Pino Palladino. So I think it would be fun to do a video where you can see me walk through this technique and actually hear a song and watch me build it. So tune in for that, and I hope to do that pretty soon. So keep an eye out. Don't forget to like and subscribe.